are doing an amazing tour of one of the most spectacular galleries and art business in South Africa. We are in Cape Town. We are being welcomed by Southern Guild Gallery, and Jacob is one of the owners of the gallery. His parents founded the gallery and is now the master of the space. So,
not yet.
Not yet. So Jacob, the gallery is located in the Cape Town waterfront, which is a very iconic part of Cape Town that has been redeveloped in the past 20-25 years. It now boasts an extraordinary museum of contemporary African art, which is the largest in the world, I think.
And, so you can see the museum over there. That's the Silo Museum. So that's the.
It was built. There were some silos there, and it has been built inside these silos. There's also a hotel in that complex, and Cape Town is at the foot of Table Mountain. So maybe we can have a peak of the mountain, that magical part of the
city. So we've got a beautiful view of the mountain from our gallery.
That's
over there.
Absolutely.
To get you homesick.
Absolutely. Oh yes, I'm so homesick. I'm hoping I'm going to end without shedding a tear, but that's going to be a little difficult.
Well, there she is.
So take us into your domain, Jacob, and tell us the story of Southern Guild.
So the Silo district started in our gallery here in the Silo district started in 2016, which is when this whole development began. So this is our gallery here. Let me let you inside. So we've got a very big space, and we represent a core group of around 20 designers. So we like to make sure that all of our artists have their work on display within the space all throughout the year. So the whole of the gallery extending to the end there is works by our various artists that we represent. And then to the right of the gallery is our exhibition space, which I'll show you just now. At the moment, we've got the solo show by Zizipho Poswa, Ilabola, which she will give you lots of information about when you go to her studio after this. So I'll just give you a little bit of a walk around. We've got amazing pieces at the moment. Lots of the work that we have within the space was produced by our artists during lockdown, and lots of them used that opportunity to try working in new ways and with new materials. So a number of our ceramicists began working in wood, and lots of them just explored new ways of working, which was beautiful to see.
So let's do a slow move with the camera on the pieces, because you know when you move on the camera, it always moves faster than in real life.
Of course. So just a bit slower with the camera, and then everyone can see the pieces. So this is a piece by Stanislav Chabinski. We've got amazing wall panels by the sculptor Dyalvane. And all of the works just go so well together as well. It's the exhibition, the gallery floor here, it moves around quite a lot. There's curatorial changes quite frequent in this space. So someone can come one week and it'll be different the next.
So the business was not always a gallery. It actually started as really a mission to bring African design to the rest of the world. And your parents, the founders, single-handedly did that by by commissioning work and also having production work that had that fine balance between being authentic to African culture and tradition, but at the same time relevant to the rest of the world.
With international appeal.
So, and you have, I mean, the business also has both art, but it also has functional everyday objects that are being sold by companies like Anthropology, I believe. Is that correct?
So Southern Guild started from, but before Southern Guild came into being, my parents had a company called Source, which was a sourcing agency. So they exported and promoted South African design with a focus on homeware. And through that work, they saw the potential and opportunity for pieces that were not necessarily commercial, but were of a higher level. So that's really how they got into the design category, and how Southern Guild started was with, they saw the potential with lots of the talent of the people that they were working with to take it to another level entirely. And from that, they began going to international fairs, showing South African work of a different category altogether, to the more commercial works that they were bringing into businesses like Anthropology, the Conran shop in the UK, West Elm. They worked with many retailers across the world, because in the early 2000s, there was a real push for African product. And from that interest, works of an entirely new level began to really take focus for them.
Okay, so let's have a look at the other artists that you have in your gallery.
So you'll see we've got some Andiles here. Ceramics have definitely become a big category for us. They were produced last year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, small assortment. And then over here, we've got works by Porky Heffer, who's one of South Africa's leading designers. These are his nesting pods that he's very famous for. He's an amazing designer. And these are inspired by molecules. And you'll see the interior is sheepskin. So it's almost like climbing back into a womb when you're inside one of these. When you come through to Cape Town, you can hop in. This one's a water molecule. His work is very playful.
I was really surprised. Something that's really interesting about South African design and about South African craft is that mix or cohabitation, I would say. It's not a mix, it's a cohabitation of very leading edge design and art that cohabits with very traditional African rooted culture, tradition, art. And in the homes, you see it completely in symbiosis. In the same room, you'll have these two completely different styles. And I think that's a very joyful and hopeful message, considering the history of the country.
But, I mean, design as a category within South Africa and the world at large is very young, but it's very young within South Africa. So there's this definite vitality, but there is such a big cultural tradition of craft that there's the vitality, but there's also the skill and craftsmanship as well. So those two coming together creates work that's very distinctive and resonates with people in a very meaningful way, I believe.
Yeah, and people are very supportive of arts and craft. I mean, it's a culture that brings beauty into the home, brings beauty into their life, values the skills and the traditions of the craft. Absolutely, yeah.
And there's a lot of goodwill and collaboration within South Africa as well. And I think that spirit comes through with the work that's produced here.
Right. So there was a question from Edie in the audience who says, are you showing only South African artists, or are you showing artists from throughout the continent?
Our focus is on artists from South Africa, and all of our artists are based in South Africa at the moment. But we do also show artists from other parts of Africa as well. But our core group are all based here. Okay. Although some of them were born outside of South Africa.
So let's carry on the tour.
Yes. So we've got. This is an example. I spoke earlier about some of our artists working in new mediums during lockdown. So this is by Madoda Fani. who's a ceramicist, who's begun also exploring working in wood. And with Southern Guild, we really like to assist artists and facilitate them working in new ways, and often the results are just incredible. This is also by this is another example of a ceramicist working in wood as well. This is Ngumamawene, so it's a wooden top with a ceramic base.
And is it all made in Cape Town, or do they have studios in different parts of the countries, and the pieces have to travel from, particularly when you have a multidisciplinary piece, does it have to travel across the country to create one piece, or are they all in Cape Town?
Some of our artists are based in Johannesburg, but the majority, and another one's based in Durban, but the majority of our artists are based in Cape Town and work with local production companies. So the majority of the production that happens locally.
Which is a really important element in terms of the aspect of circularity of the craft, and supporting the local community, using the local materials, passing on the skills at a local level, and at the same time for you then exporting all that richness and that cultural message to overseas, which is really important.
And building meaningful relationships as well with local designers and local crafters and foundries, and that's very much what we're about.
It's wonderful. There's a great example of patronage and support for the local art craft communities, which I know is a very important word in your vocabulary, the element of community.
Certainly. So let me take you through to this area here. So we've got more works by Ngumamawene, and you can see with these pieces, these are smoke-fired terracotta vessels that he creates. And this table over here, he's translated the shape of his vessels into a table leg.
Oh, that's amazing. What was the inspiration of the vessels?
The inspiration of the vessels. He's been producing.
They look a little bit like the women who wear the necklaces around the neck,
They do. I have to check with him about that in terms of the Indibene necklaces. They look sort of, they're quite gourd shaped.
Right.
But his carving is absolutely incredible, and these are turned as well. But it's amazing how he's translated this turning on the wheel to turning on a lathe.
Right. Yeah.
Just translates so well. So the craftsmanship's phenomenal.
And it's the same artist who made the ceramic and the wood pieces, or did he?
Two of our ceramicists have begun working in wood, so that's an example from both artists.
Right. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so this is our exhibition space here. So this is Zizipho's Ilabola series.
Huge.
It's an amazing collection. They're monumental, and it's been such a successful show. She's done an amazing job, and I'm sure she'll go into great detail with you during your time with her in the studio into what went into this work in the background.
Absolutely, but it's wonderful to see them in real life and to appreciate the scale of the work. So before we go to Zizipho, I just want to say that the body, as I understand, the body of the pieces is in ceramic, but the horns is in cast bronze. Is that right?
They're bronze horns, yes. And it's the first time there's been this mix of materials in her work.
Okay.
and people have responded so positively to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's been an amazing, development.
Incredible. Well, thank you, Jacob, for this quick tour of the gallery. I now want to move to Zizipho and Andile, who are waiting for us outside the gallery. Hello.
Hi guys. So
It looks like it's a little
windy, so we won't be.
It's a little windy.
It's a bit windy outside here. Yes. So we won't be too long outside, but this is just to give you an idea of how, the space outside where we're located. If you can face it more this way, so on where I'm pointing, this is where it is on the side. This is the southern suburb that move around. There's a couple of restaurants and factories and design places around newly developed space. So we moved in here about 2019 November. So it's been mostly the station here.
Right.
We actually have a gallery at the old biscuit mill, which is about 10 minutes if you're walking. So it's in the same neighborhood. The gallery is in Woodstock, and then here we in Salt River.
Okay.
So let's walk to the studio. Welcome to the Miso studio. This is basically, I think this is where we are, and just paint a little bit aside. So the space is quite large and high ceiling, and the studio on the other side. So where Zizi and I sort of using the space and have the kilns and the wheels and everything. And then upstairs we have the residence space and the workshop space, so which will take you through. So in the meantime, so where you see here is second, this is a place where we sit and have conversations, have sound, and also we have some of our meeting and rituals at times. Like what you see here now, for instance, some of the pieces that are out of New York to join the Tongo show that's going to open in April. And if you're coming through this side, so I'll walk you through this way and by the studio. So what you see here, it's just some of the scrolls that when I'm working, I'll be sort of practicing my brushmanship and brush work that represented the symbolism that's defined in the stories of Tongo. Come through.
So we work in two, we split the studio into two. So Andile works on this side. This is a section, but we will take you through to my side as well.
Yes. So I just want to be sure, can you hear us clearly? Is the camera not too fast?
Yeah, we can hear you well. The camera is a little fast.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do before we really dive into this is the name of your studio has a meaning.
All right.
Imiso.
So
it means tomorrow. It's imiso, meaning in our language, in Xhosa, it means ngomso. So in our meaning, we wanted to reflect what we working today for the better tomorrow. So it basically means the future.
Yeah, because we're going to hear that in your work, the link between the tradition and the contemporary lifestyle and making sure that it carries on in the future is a very important theme in both your collections and your practices.
Yes, yes. No, that's key. I think we're going to get into detail on that when you talk about the work. But by all means, it's this is one of the core values of why we do what we do, and the work that comes is very meaningful in that sense that it's not only for us, but it represents the whole nation, the whole culture and the clan, but the whole heritage of but for the next generation as well. So this is just to give you an idea of the kind of workstation that you'll see. There's whole lot of chips and things and small things, from the paints and glazes and little objects that one used and devised to create, like to create different motifs and whatnot. So the tool rack, if you come closer. So found objects, tools, found made from the works, go to the flea market and found objects to create textures and shaping and whatnot. All sort of things, from visiting like an art exhibition and then find useful things. Going to a rubbish bin and then find little things to create textures. So, but this is all one would consider as junk, but these are all very important and valuable tools in my trade. And but what also is very important is if you're looking at on the wall, they just face it there. So when there's a body of work that one is working on, so there's so much detail of research and planning that goes with that, which is very important, because I think the journey and the process is key, from the sketches from the sketchbook to the wall as a process, design and drawing, to reference images and color schemes and whatnot. So that's what you see in there. And then to little making taste maquettes of objects, and just to get the scale of the three-dimensional form, to developing stamps and tools, making them so that they can reflect whatever the collection that one is working on. Collecting bits of clay at times, depending where one is coming is. So one tends to find different clays or to mix some of the glazes and whatnot, and a whole lot of pile of brushes. I mean, this is some of the things that I like, that you'll see they reflect on the work as well. But coming through, anytime when you want to have a question, you can. But as you can see, so this is our big kiln. This is 50 cubic kiln, which is a trolley kiln. Pull it just slightly back. So you can pull it and then load and then push it back in. So it's electric fired. So we use electric kiln aside because that's easy accessible fuel in our case, being in the suburb. And come through.
It's about 1 meter high.
Yeah.
So we can put pieces that are almost, yeah.
Yes.
So
and so that would be
that kiln, when you acquired the kiln, it was a important moment in both your practices, because it enabled you to really scale up your work. Is that correct?
That's very important, yes, because I think this was in 2016 when I was doing the show with Film and Bender, and then one of the things that they required was the scale. And obviously that was not possible with the small kiln that we have in the other studio. So with that, one was able to practice, expand on the scale that they've always wanted to do, but also with the big scale, and then there's more challenges, but that there's more sort of canvas as to how one can express themselves. And I mean, that led to us even finding a much bigger space, and Zizi started exploring a much bigger scale, which was quite amazing as well. And yeah, so that was quite, I guess, a good leap in what to do. And so different type of method of what we use for our glazing. So from deep glazing, brush on glazes, to for these large pieces that cannot be lifted or dipped or poured. So we have the spray booth as well. So where we sort of spray some of the glazes and other glazes on the pieces, especially Zizi's pieces.
Do you make
also we use
glazes yourself?
Equipment like this?
Let me show you.
Yeah. In terms of managing the scale. So this can go up, it can go down. Yeah, it helps a lot for big pieces, anything. Yeah, it's a trolley basically.
Yeah, it's a trolley table. So I think with scale and in space, it's very important for one, or you find yourself finding new equipment and tools that makes your life easier in terms of production. For instance, just a quick one. For that first exhibition, I even acquired the crane so we can lift the pieces off the of the ground into the kiln. So that was quite something, and just trying to make sure that the life is easier.
Andile,
yes.
All this equipment requires large investment. What is the financial infrastructure in South Africa to support artisans like you, artisans like you makers? Is there a special loans? Is there special programs, or is it part of the relationship with the gallery and with your patrons?
So in our case, there's a couple of all of that as well. But at most, you do not get that without having to invest yourself in as well. So the key thing is that so you have to have initial investment as a company or as an artist. And from there, you can only apply, you need to have all the right documentation for the government, say subsidy, if there is a portion of that, they can pay, say 20% of the overall of the cost of whatever equipment that is, if you have all the right documents, which sometimes not easy. It can be a bit, what you call it, petite and, tedious process. But once you have all the documentation, you are able to access for a certain period of time. But once you are somewhat more mature, I would say, a designer.
Yeah,
so we've had
great support from the government.
Yes.
And when we were starting, I think we did a few international shows through them. So they don't necessarily give you cash at hand, but they'll pay for, the trip, they'll pay for the accommodation and all of that. And if you then put the money yourself, then you can claim, after that.
Yeah.
Something like that. But it's quite complicated, and sometimes it's not an easy thing to access.
So, but also you mentioned something about the relationship with galleries as well. It's something that in South Africa you would hardly find that the galleries will sort of provide you the infrastructure or upfront funds for you to work towards an exhibition or a body of work. So unless you have, for instance, we have a relationship with Southern Guild at this stage. I mean, we've been working together for now close to 12 since we started, or they started themselves.
About 12 years.
About 12 years. So there's a relationship there. So if there's anything, for instance, that hinders us for us to fulfill a certain exhibition, so we can speak about it. So, okay, how can you assist? And then they will be that. But it's very important. It's based on the relationship, because galleries themselves, it's very difficult for them to put investment, and then the artist doesn't deliver, and then to be a cost for them as well. So that's key. But at most, it's for instance the kilns, when Fragment Bender wanted us to have an exhibition, so it needed entirely new space, new equipment, and for us to achieve that, all of that initial investment had to be, which then eventually we obviously through the cost, the sales of the work needed to be paid back. So, but the key thing is that initial infrastructure investment is key for one to be able to not worry about paying the rent and electricity and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, what are we? And then coming through this side. So we're going over now to Zizi's section, where she produced some of the work, most of the work, together with Chabinski. Come to this side.
So I work with a team of two production assistants. Chabinski has been with us for 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah, for 15 years, since the beginning. Yeah. And he specializes in throwing, so he can throw very big pieces. So I work closely with them for specialized kind of forms that I'm looking for. Here are you.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. Hello.
Yes, and up here is my brother. His name is Andile.
Hello, Stanislav.
Creativity runs in the family. So he's been with us also for maybe like about 8 years. Yeah, but he's specializing in coiling, so he can also coil massive pieces like the one he's working on now. Yeah.
Just so you can see the scale. So this is basically fabric, just to keep the piece as is building, so it's much nice and hard here, and it's moist here, so just so that to keep the consistency of the clay. So this is just one other way of controlling the environment around the studio, as sometimes with fire and then heat and whatnot.
So you can come to the side. These are the miniatures of Ilobola, as you can see, with the horns. So yeah, that's what's mostly there. And up here is the inspiration from Umthwalo, my first series, and Eastern Cape, where I come from. Also from Africa. I think this was from West Africa somewhere. And the hair series that I did, and Ilobola right here. And also the production tools are right here. And yeah, sort of finished product that's sitting right here.
Do you make, other than the pieces of art that you make for the galleries and for exhibitions, do you do regular functional household objects? Do you have a production side?
Yeah. So where we are now, the Imiso studio, then there's a second location, which is at the old biscuit mill, where we have the Imiso ceramics. That's where we started. That's why we moved in when we started the company together. So there we have a small studio where everything that you would find there, we produce it in that studio. So what you'll find there is small, sort of like, I would say, classic pieces.
Yeah, pieces like this.
So like this, for instance, is easy. I'll find a piece for you, just keep it there.
Both myself and Andile, we also create for the gallery, for our gallery. So we've got about 6 different collections. Andile is about 4, 3, and I've got about 3 as well, combined.
So you will find sort of like pieces like these, but obviously we don't have much of the pieces that we represent there because they're mostly displayed at the Imiso Gallery. Yeah, so what we do make other pieces, small scale, in that sense.
Yeah, actually this is Pinchbo. This is what we started with Southern Guild. They were exporting these to anthropology and the retailers. Yeah.
So, I mean, thank you for the tour. I think what would be wonderful would be nice. You want to go upstairs to show us quickly where the...
So we're going to take you upstairs quickly just to show you the space where we do the workshops and also where the spaces are located for when we're hosting a resident artist. So we'll just go through. So it's a very beautiful space, beautiful lighting, beautiful, high ceiling that is, very make it life easy for making these and have activities as well around the studio. So when we moved in here in November 2019, so the whole of December and January following year, 2020, we were doing all the fittings of the workshop space, where we could host about 15 physical people in this space. And then on the other side, on the other side, we would allocate a space where we can host, not too fast, so we can host a resident artist, so they can spend a month or 2 and have access to facilities within the studio, or we can sort of like link them with other artists outside our studio and explore the culture as well. But so lockdown happened, so that didn't happen, and we started this Zoom workshop, which was quite amazing because obviously, technology, but also we get to access a lot of people from not only local people, but people from around the world to hear what we had to say, but to share, like the knowledge and the relations that we have with other artists that are friends of ours as well. So currently what's happening, we have 2 mentors or mentees, which it's artists that starting up, that we saw the potential to share what we know, but guiding their process. For instance, here we have a lady called Groom, who's sort of like a starting up, but really showing so much potential. Come to the side. So the facilities here, so with a shelf, with a couple of towing wheels. So we sort of guiding them in terms of the process of establishing their identity and whatnot. And then that side, we'll go back to that. And then this area here allocated for the resident space. So we currently have a friend, but who's been here for 3 months now, doing jewelry. So she's been here. By the end of the month, she will be done, and then she can go back to and then we can take another resident artist as well. but it's such a beautiful space to, because once you're here, there's a bit of a railing, so you can see that's the entrance down there, and then that's the bottom, and so it's really quite an amazing space that can transform to anything depending on the person that you're hosting at the time. Can you point down here? So this is the type of throwing wheels that we have that one can use when they're here.
When we do workshops, we're setting it up here. We've got about 4 actually. Yeah.
Come through. So we're gonna go downstairs. So there's another artist that we mentoring as well, Sinetemba, and those are some of the pieces that he's doing. So we're trying to find for him to create like bread and butter, but also to create some sort of an identity for himself as well. So if you remember what we said in terms of like, because we have been doing this for a while, we have a lot of young up and coming artists and designers who come to us to ask, for help and assist to guidance and whatnot. So we decided to make it official that we will run a mentorship program. So they are the first one to be officially mentored by us.
Yeah, it's a year program. So next year we'll take on another 2. Yeah, we decided just to make it not too big so that we can manage it as well.
Amazing. So while you set up at the table and we catch up with you, I just wanted to ask any questions, ladies? Are you blown out of your mind by what you're seeing already and about this beautiful space? I know that we have some ceramicists. Tanya, do you have a question or?
I do, yes, if that's possible.
Of course.
Yeah. Andile, I did meet you when you were at the Leach Pottery. I just wondered, now that you've finished your time and you're back in South Africa, what did you get from going to the Leach Pottery?
Oh man, okay, just one moment. Let me figure this technology out here. I'm gonna leave this meeting on my phone.
Switch it off.
You've got it on the.
Here we go. Okay, so switch off the mobile and mute yourself on the.
Yes, there you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Let's see.
We've lost your connection.
We can.
Yes, now I can hear you. Can you hear me again?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. All right. So yes, that's amazing. Yes, I remember your face now. So it's so interesting because I've met so many people. So you're asking if what I got out of that experience. Oh wow, it was amazing. So one thing I can say though, for me, that's always puzzled people when they ask me about the Leach Pottery experience. I've embraced and enjoyed the facilities and the history that is, that you feel being there, with Leach and Hamada and the tradition of ceramics being there. But, I'm a bit of a stranger person because when I go to these places, I don't only go for the medium. The medium is a vehicle, is a tool. So the culture, for me, the culture and the spirituality that I got out of that, it's a lot of learning and discovering of some ancient sites and traditions that fed into, I guess, my journey for even being there of what I was establishing. I seriously, obviously enjoy the different kind of firing that I do, like the gas firing and the reduction, the clay, the glazes, some of the old age glazes that they've kept for all the years. Beautiful, that was amazing. I embraced that. And fully, I really got myself into it. And the facilities are quite amazing as well, because the team itself is very helpful. They were very kind. And I mean, when I came in to introduce myself, doing some rituals of introducing myself with my ancestry and sharing, they embraced that. And now they knew who I am. But when I left there, everyone was saying Kamagu, because every second word would be Kamagu and the practice of gratitude and whatnot. So that's basically what I'm saying, is that it was not so much of the ceramics or the ceramic experience, but it was the whole community. The culture was key, and I think that's something that I take advantage of when I go to any residences, which is something that we would like to, in return, when someone comes here, they will have to not only immerse themselves into the actual making, but the culture of the people of the place as well. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Fantastic.
Can I ask Zizipho, your colours, amazing. Where do your colour ideas come from?
Wow, I come from a textile design background, and when I grew up, our traditional houses are actually very colorful. I think it comes from within. Yeah, I'm born with it. I can't even control it myself. If I come across a certain color and I need to let it out, it will be in me until I do it.
Yeah.
It will, yeah.
Well, I mean, I couldn't dream of a better segue into the second part of the conversation, which is going to be concentrating on your each of your practices. Before we start, I want to just share a little bit with the audience that might not necessarily be familiar, is that you are both Xhosa, and I'm not pronouncing it well because I absolutely cannot do the click, obviously.
We can teach you guys.
Which is a tribe that comes from the Eastern Cape mostly, and I believe it's the second most populous home language after Zulu in South Africa. Now, for those who don't know, South Africa has 11 official languages, but about 35 are spoken in the country, as I understand it, and it's always a great joy to try to listen when you're in South Africa and guess, which of course we can't do, but it's every language has a different music. So Zizipho, you grew up you know, in a traditional home, and you started, as you were saying, as a textile designer and a fashion designer. What made you come from the textile to the clay? What happened?
So when I was after I finished my matric, which I did in Untitled, which is in the Eastern Cape, so I moved on to Port Elizabeth, which was the closest town that offered art and design, and I discovered that there was more. I knew that there was art, but I didn't know there were different art forms, or what do you call it, art disciplines.
Yeah.
And so I got to discover that there was textiles, there was stained glass. So I got introduced to different mediums. And in that, I met Andile, who was majoring in ceramics, which we didn't know at the time that we were going to end up together. But so between textiles, I also explored ceramics, which I excelled both in it, but I fell in love with surface design. So when I moved on to Cape Town, I met Andile, and he was already working at a studio, starting his own thing on the side. And I also got to Cape Town, and I was working in a textile design studio, also starting something on the side. And when we got the opportunity to start our business, because when we met, we were like, we have to do something together. And we had 3 other friends at the time, and we started the business. And ceramics was the easiest to start with because we could get the materials, we got the equipment. We had a mentor that offered to buy us, small things to get started. And yeah, we never looked back. It was ceramics, and for me, I feel like it's found me before. Yeah, I looked for it. Yeah.
So you do ceramics, and I'm going to share my screen because I'd like to show the progression of your work, but also the inspiration of your work, which is truly fabulous. Your work is really inspired by African womanhood and the place of women in the Xhosa tradition. Can you share with us a little bit what does that mean on a daily basis, and maybe that and
That's
come
where I was raised. I was surrounded by women. I was actually raised by a very strong woman. And so when I started doing the
bigger pieces, which is through Southern Guild, I had to come up with something that resonated with me. And the theme was extraordinary. And for me, what came through at the time was women around me and strong women. So I wanted to put that across. And yeah, that's how I got into it. And from there, yes, I've continued to celebrate my culture.
Right. But I mean, I know that being a woman is fashionable around the world, and there isn't a country where the women are not trying to, fight for their rights and establish and have recognition and all that. But the culture of the society being carried and bound together by women is very specific in the Kazakh culture, isn't it? It really goes to the core of the culture. Am I wrong when I say that?
I didn't get that last part.
The role of women, the place of women, the tradition around women are absolutely central to the Kazakh culture. It's more than just being the matriarch. It's really being the core of the community, the culture, the traditions.
Yes, totally. Yeah, women definitely are the nurturers. They will provide, and where I come from, it's like communities that are disadvantaged. They walk long distances, and they still make sure that they invest in their families. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to pay homage to them.
If I may add in what Ziz is saying, and just to echo what you're saying as well, is that it's very much so. So one of the things that we need to understand about South Africa as well is that the apartheid system that came through long time had created a system that will have men leave their families to go to the cities, which then meant that the women will be the keepers of the knowledge and teach the kids and basically do everything that the men wouldn't do when they're not there. So that is very important, because all the knowledge that I know was passed on by at most, and my formidable years was based on the mothers and the women that were around me, because all the men will be in the cities, which is very important. So those knowledge keepers, those ones who will make sure that they walk those long distances, carrying the babies on their back and carrying the the wood and the loads on themselves, and singing the songs and whatnot. I think that's what Zizi is trying to reflect on the work that she's doing as well. So this is very, very important.
So let's have a look now on how it translates in your work. This collection was inspired by the women carrying the load. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes. You know what happened? I think it's been in my subconscious mind because I was raised in the village. So these images are in my head. So I would create the piece and I would find the image later on online. So, but for me, it's powerful that I could find a perfect match that tells the story that I'm trying to say. So if I put the piece and the image together, it confirms that I'm able to, tell the story in the right way.
How big is that piece that we're looking at on the right?
It's about 1 meter or 1.2. Yeah,
okay.
About 70 wide.
70 centimeters.
70 centimeters, yes. All of them are roughly there, but the one on the right here that you have is about 2 meters high.
Now, I understand that your pieces are always named after a member of your family or a close friend?
Yes, definitely. I started with, reflecting on my aunts and my mom and my cousins. Yes, they've got a role they played in my life, and this is my way of honoring and paying homage to them.
So who are we looking at here?
No, Winile. And this is a neighbor of mine back in the village. Yes.
Both of them are the same woman?
No. The one on the right hand is a Winile. This is before I named, the one on the left was part of Umthwalo series, so I had not given names. And it's been something that I've been thinking, they've been bought already. And I don't know if naming them while they're already in their homes is going to make sense. But when I started, I had just given the series the name. And I just said, Umthwalo 1, Umthwalo 2, Umthwalo 3. And then I realized that they do need some identity. And when I did the next collection, then I started naming them.
So can you tell us a little bit about your friend that you represented here? What characteristics of her are you trying to represent here? Or is it just her personality in general that you were just illustrating?
Well, yeah, I can't really describe, but it's mostly, if you can see on the top, they're carrying the load, and it's just, yeah, I don't know how to describe it.
Let me try and just chip in because I can. You know? Again, what's amazing with working with Zizi, as much as we have different, let's say, language in terms of the work that you see here, but we share the same sort of cultural and background and roots in that manner. So what I'm going to tell you now is that one of the reasons why Zizi would pay homage, first of all, is as a child in the village, you're not a parent, you're not a child only to your parents. That's one thing. So if your parents are busy doing something, for instance, Zizi's mom was a teacher. So if Nowenile is a stay-home mom, so we'll make sure that Zizi is fed. We'll make sure that Zizi is cleaned. You know, we'll make sure that Zizi is disciplined. If Zizi is jumping around instead of doing the chores, Nowenile will make sure that Zizi has been disciplined, so that when you come back, the water is hot, the mother has the tea, that kind of thing. So it's what Zizi is trying to communicate here. That load is, yes, there's a load, which is the literal load, but there's a metaphorical load where one carries all of that load, not only by themselves, but they carry it, yes, by themselves, because the husband are not there. You know what I mean? So I think that's what I would like to share.
Yeah.
So this was another inspiration, and that's a very specific and special place. I mean, we all want Black women here. We are all unbelievably envious of it, and that was your homage to it. But it's also about that very specific place, which is the hair salon. What happens? Can you share a little bit with us what happens in the hair salon, or is it just that private space?
It's mostly our neighbors.
Can you tell them we're still busy? Sorry, there's guys that want to drill again, so we're telling them we're still busy.
Yeah, we have our neighbors that are working.
That's okay.
Building the wall, so they're asking about time.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so we've got about 30 minutes.
Yeah. So let's maybe move on to the, that was another illustration of that collection. But then we move to the current exhibit, which is called Ilobola. And can you explain to us exactly what the tradition of the Lobola is?
So in our culture, there's no customary marriage complete without the Lobola. So this is the beginnings part of a Lobola. And it's very important for women to understand this. And for me, I wanted to educate myself. I wanted to also understand what goes in the processes of Ilobola. As I'm not married, but my mom has been, and I thought that if it's something that I might be part of, whether it's through my children or it's through, my family. But I think it was important as part of my culture to understand what goes into that detail and in the details of the process of Ilobola, to be specific, and why it's done. And so I had to research, and I got to understand that it's the main role, the main purpose of it is to unite the families. And this is also something that it's also misunderstood, I would say. Sometimes people would think that it's all about buying a person or buying a wife. And yet, I think also because it has evolved into a monetary form, now it has changed how it was in the beginning. So I wanted to focus on the authentic part of it, the beginning of why it was done, and it was paid through the cattle, and hence
so it's the payment that the father of the bride, of the family of the bride, gives to the
family of the groom. Yes.
The family of the groom.
Yes.
That's right. So, and it's a whole community exercise. There is negotiations. There is everybody gets involved, and to decide how much needs to be given, to decide what's the purpose exactly.
Yes, the two families they meet to negotiate, and mostly it's the groom side that has to negotiate. Yes, that have to come and introduce themselves and tell how they've gotten to know this family, and the purpose of this payment, whether it's monetary or whether it is in a form of cattle. The idea here is to unite the families and also to invest in them in the wedding, in the actual wedding ceremony. So once the payment has been made to the bride's family, then they can make demands of how their wedding they would like it to look, how they want their wedding to look like.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the role? I mean, this photo on the right, you called it the uncles. What is the role of the uncles?
They are there to negotiate on the groom side, but these are the uncles from the groom side, and they are there to introduce themselves. So what will happen from there is that the uncles of the bride's side will come and welcome them and have their demands, and that's when the negotiation will take place.
Just to give context on why that picture perhaps is there, because they're standing outside the gate before they come in. So they cannot be let inside. They need to do a certain gestures, be it call a certain name or say something, or and then people will know they came here for this particular reason, because people who can have visitors, and then maybe these people come to rob you or to for something else. So when you know what sort of gestures to do, then before they open that gate to let them in, they need to produce something, so some sort of a gift. At that point. So I think that's why it's there. Then once they're inside, they need to introduce themselves. Who are they, and why are they there? How do they identify that house? And then and it becomes the whole negotiation back and forth, trying to figure out, are you in the right place, and so on and so on. Yeah.
And that's when the families actually get to know each other as well.
Right. And it's very important that they know each other, because they are really the support system for, we see here, the bride and groom. If something goes wrong, they have that safety net of the community, because the two families know each other and trust each other. So we saw a little bit in the galleries the size of your pieces, and I wanted to share a few more photos and some details. I think that blue is, we go back to Sally Ann's question about the colors and that extraordinary blue. Do you make your glaze yourself, or how does that work?
No, we get them ready-made, but I can mix, if there's a certain color that I'd like to achieve, I'm able to mix the existing glazes. So I don't make it from scratch. I can just mix a blue and a white, and if I want a lighter blue.
Right. And what is the name of this piece? And I want to highlight that you refer to your pieces as she. They are definitely people of the female kind. Who is this?
No, this one is like I've named some of the pieces through the processes and the people involved in the whole Lobola process negotiation. So that's a brandy, which is given. I'll read it because I'm also learning from this. I'll just read it for you from my post. Just a second.
You said it's what's given to the to loosen up the family.
I just want to describe it properly. It's called Imvula Mlomo, so it's a brandy offering. In the customary practice of ilobola, the offering of brandy imvulamlomo is a small ritual dictated by the bride to be family that usually takes place just before formal negotiations begin. So that's the brandy that they will get.
Right.
It is meant to break the tension and make the groom's family feel welcome.
Yeah,
More brandy.
Yeah.
Bring more brandy. Yeah.
So, but in a tradition, like I mean, sort of like a long back then, they would have brewed kombucha, which is the traditional beer made out of sorghum and maize.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So time and things changes. So as you can see, it evolved to now ready-made alcohols or liquors. As far as, you know, instead of cows, because people live in the cities now, they don't have either, you know, the farms and the cattle. Now then it becomes money. Yeah.
It has evolved.
It has evolved in that sense.
And what are the names of these three? Which I think that pairing is totally spectacular. And the horns, in particular, the shape of the horns are so true to what we see in the herds.
So some, like I haven't kept all the names by heart, but I can tell you I've named them after negotiators, after the uncles. Right. I've named the mom-in-law and the father-in-law because they are also a crucial part of this whole process. I've also named them after an introductory cow. There's a cow, specific cow that is non-negotiable that the groom's family have to bring for them to introduce themselves as their family.
Right. So, and the does the red have any specific, or you just, that's the color that you fell in love with?
That's the color I fell in love with, but that's representing the bride.
The bride.
I had the bride and the groom. The groom is the one in blue. And so how it's presented in the gallery, the bride is next to the groom.
Amazing. What is your next project?
Wow, I'm actually working on 2 shows. There's one show that's in Paris called Art Exception. I'm working on those actually 1 or 2 pieces, and I'm also going to be joining another show called Ceramic Now. I think it's in America, and I just need to confirm. And there's one that I'm doing with Andile in Australia as well.
And what are the inspirations? What are the traditions that are inspiring you in these shows?
Well, for the 2 shows, I'm going to be doing the series, my first pieces that I've done. And then for the one in Australia, which is it's a collaborative work between myself and Andile, and we bringing out our heritage, basically.
So the Australian one, it's part of the Indian Ocean Craft Triennale. It's going to be in Perth in September. Right from September into December, I think. So what we're working on here, there is basically within the Xhosa tribes, we've got clan. So each clan has a totem. So a totem is a certain kind of an animal or an insect that is associated with that clan. And when you see that totem, then there's certain rituals and certain signs, or that it's symbolizing a certain thing, or that you need to be aware of, or that you need to give thanks for. So we're trying to use those totemic rituals and objects, reflect them on these. But more so, what's important about it is that we will be having conversation with also some of the First Nation people in Australia to learn more about how their totem rituals and song and sound relate in terms of cultural exchange. So that's how the theme of where we're exhibiting is restoring and cultural restoration and reclaiming, and which fits very well with what we do in terms of really paying homage to where we come from and to who we are, and so for the next generation to proud themselves to their culture and their heritage as well, but just to make it acceptable and understood out in the world.
I mean, so again, a fabulous segue to you, because I'd like to concentrate on your practice and Andile. And I mean, the connection to your ancestors is very important to you. And I read that you wanted to share your journey of healing. What is the healing?
Yes, so where do I even begin? What is the healing? The healing, so as a people, all of us, and most of us, so there's a lot of traumas that we go through. You know, there's a lot of displacement that happens within people. I mean, I'm going to refer to my people in this case, but if you think about how colonialism played a role in coming to the Africa and shifting and moving people, and Christianity just as well, coming in and dictating as to what needs to be done, what's right and what's wrong, and you know, moving people from their grazing land and the land that they lived by, and taking certain artifacts that played a role in their rituals and so on. So that's displacement. And there's a physical displacement I'm talking about, where people demolish houses, move them and place them in sort of concentration camps. We've experienced, or at least my ancestors experienced that. But then with that, what that comes with that, there's a lot of traumas that the generation that we are and the following that have experienced that carry that trauma. And if we think that we can solve that by voting and creating democracies and changing flags and so on, and that's like putting a bandage on a, you know, rotten wound. But what's important, and which is one of the roles that as an artist, and as an artist, it's someone who needs to make people feel, who has to use the gift and the tool to heal them through what they do. So in my case, in our culture, we have people that are practicing traditional healers. So from herbs to song to diviners and so on. And people use different tools. In my case, I was given the clay as a way of communicating and addressing some of those things. So, and that's the healing aspect of it, is talking and journeying and remembering and helping people to remember who we are. So the gift that I have, that I've been given by the, let's say God, or we call it Ukamata, or it's something that I carry from the people that came before me and continue where they left off, because they were not able to do that because they either had to move places or go to the cities and conform within the laws that were placed at that time. So the healing is to restore, is to bring pride. The healing is to have people, you know, understand why people act and behave the certain in which way, and the community, the practices of Ubuntu, which is the practice of working together as a community, not in isolation, understanding that some of the things I've touched on is that as a child, you are a child raised by a village, not by your parents. Reason is that when you grow up, you're gonna be contributing to that community, and that's what Ubuntu is about. It's not to weigh you down, but it's about you contributing and participating, but also imparting what you've learned as well.
So let's have a look. It's a beautiful message, obviously, and we're going to see how it translates in your art. That's an earlier exhibit. Can you share with us a little bit what that was about?
All right, so the pieces that you're seeing here, these are the pieces that were done in 2016 within the exhibition at Friedman Bender, titled Kamagu, which the phrase referred to gratitude. It's not thank you, it's not, you know, being pleasant, but it's about going in deeper to say, I am grateful, I see you, I hear you, I am acknowledging you and everyone else that came across me, everyone who came before me, who paved and journeyed with me. So the work was not reflecting the word itself, but the body of work was to say, as far as my career started, my growing up, I've been making and doing the clay because this is a passion, this is something I cannot not do. But having to be appointed by this prestigious gallery in these different places to have a body of work that can speak and put my community and my tribe and my country and my continent in the map so they can know and learn about me. So it is important to acknowledge people that came, that assisted me to be able to achieve that. So that's what was the piece. So if I move to the next piece, perhaps you have a question or you want to prompt, but again, you're moving.
Can you see this one? This is the next.
Can we go back slightly back to the last? Yes, that's fine. Because the element I'm going to speak about here is similar to the pieces that were there. But one of the things that runs through the work that we do or that I do in these particular pieces is using some of the motifs of the tradition of the rituals that in the country or in the continent or in my tribe and my family would practice, like the body scarification or kachula, which is part of the very important ritual practice in our culture, which is obviously dying out. So by enacting or applying it to the surface of the pieces, it's a way of documenting it for the next generation to and also for the other people from outside our culture to understand the purpose and the role of why those practices were made.
What is the role and purpose of the scarification in a few words?
Yes, so it's for different reasons, for healing purposes. So for instance, if you have issues with your eyes, a certain member of your family will be the one who will be appointed to perform that surgeon or that ritual. Also for rite of passage or marking a certain kind of a rite of passage or stage in one's life, or a certain kind of a clan identification. So if you look up, you will find different markings for different tribes or families or people, and also for protection from evil or negative energies as well, where a herb after the wound will be applied onto the wound and as a way of protecting you from the.
Right.
Yeah.
So the next collection is again very relevant to life in the village and in the.
So this was a collection called Ilaza. Ilaza being the silo, a grain silo to be specific. And so growing up in the villages in the Eastern Cape, grew up farming, as you would call it, but it was just part of my everyday, where you have all the livestock, you can name it, and you have the land to cultivate. And this is something that I've experienced and I've grown to know how to go about it. But as time goes by, all of that faded away because everyone aspired to go to the city because that's what people think that I guess the better life, so to say, is. But within that practice and those activities, there was a whole lot of another culture from the language perspective, from the rituals and celebration perspective, from the certain kind of vocabulary and activities that were done. Because in Africa, a home is not a home without, is not fully a home without a silo, because what that means is that with all the work that has been done for that season of planting and harvesting, once you have a silo and it's full, so the animal and the livestock and the community will be very much nourished and fed for the next season. And what was important about this was that within the practice of the cultivating the land, so certain kind of celebration, certain kind of dishes that I would look forward when I go home, they're no longer there because we don't, less people are practicing the farming of the land, celebration of the first rains and the first harvest and the first fruits. Even the kind of songs we're sang at that time are no longer, because, so what this is meaning here is that the certain kind of language spoken and the vocabulary that was spoken of isiXhosa is being lost. As a result, the youngsters these days, when I say Idlaza, they understand it as a crib, because that's the slang name for a crib, meaning a beautiful fancy house. So my role here was to place a rightful meaning of the words and the practice through this work in a way that can be documented, so that the next generation or those who are here that can see this, can experience and learn more about the culture itself. So that's what this work was about, really.
So you really see yourself as just a link in the chain, and that's trying to perform that role as fully and as strongly as you can, and passing on the tradition and preserving the way of life.
It's if I may say, at first like any other person who's passionate about doodling and clay. It's a child game and whatnot, and it's beautiful because that's a passion. And I wish that all of us, we can be playing throughout the rest of our lives until we know why we're playing, because that's what we've been doing. But as you grow and mature and experiencing life and realizing your purpose in this life, so remember, you are raised by the community, and everyone else who you come across, they pick up something about you and they will guide that process. They will try and nurture and put water and all sorts of things until such time that the elders start speaking and saying that your purpose is to restore, is to basically bring pride and dignity into our tribe. And then you wouldn't know what that means until you just could continue doing what you do, and then you will find all the guides and the support that you need in order for you to fulfill that. And that's what this work is about. It's really me playing, but using the clay as a way of channeling the messages that should be channeled through me in that sense.
Tell me, how do your families or the members of your village view your interpretation, both of you, of your culture?
Well, where I grew up, they actually don't understand what we do. They just see beautiful vases and that's where it ends. So we have a role to play in terms of educating them. So whenever we've got customers that walk in our gallery and they come from the Eastern Cape, or not specifically from the Eastern Cape, but there's a lot of them that don't understand what we do. And so we constantly have to, educate them.
And this is very right in so saying so. And that role, that's why it led us to really start bringing the objects home and having the people from our villages and from our home to experience what we do and educate them so that they can understand. Yes, they understand that we are making a living out of playing with clay, which was considered as a child game because it was not part of our school syllabus and at the time. But the pride they see, you can see, they can tell now that this is a very important role because first of all, because we're showing our work all over the place right now, internationally, we're placing and putting our homes and our towns and villages in the maps. Now you will know where our village is because you're going to have to try and find that. You kind of like a little bit have a taste of what sort of activities that are happening and why they're happening. And you may want to come and visit that as well, which is very important because what the world has done was sort of placing certain and highlighting certain things about places, but not appreciating the riches and of the cultures and heritage. So yes, they are proud to know that we are carrying on what they've lost that they couldn't carry because of certain challenges that they've had as well.
Yeah. So
any production of ceramics now where we come from, it's there's like very little crafters that are back where I come from. And so our role is to go back there and make sure that we restore and teach women how to, make clay again.
Right. So this is your most recent exhibit, Andile Itongo, and it's just finished at Savin Guild. It's on its way to New York. But before you opened it at Savin Guild, you actually took all the pieces, which we see here, that's the collection, and you took it to your village where you come from. And tell us, this is a beautiful aerial view of that circle, which is such an important, the circle, the vessel, the round shape always has extraordinary meanings. And you brought the pieces home, and then what happened?
Yes, I mean, every time when I'm looking at these images, I have goosebumps or become emotional. Not because, something is, but there's a joy that one finds in seeing this. There's a beautiful emotion when you're looking back in retrospect in terms of how people responded to the work itself as well. Because this is something that we haven't done. This is something that first time even the galleries here have not done, because when we had the conversation, first of all, with Southern Guilds, that this has to go home for the reason that this work is very important, it's that powerful that it serves as a reminder, as a healing, especially after coming out of the lockdown or also going through the pandemic.
you know, people losing hope, losing, you know, their loved ones and losing everything really, but finding themselves that they need to, with the work that is and what it means, Itongo, and the messages that are coming through to restore. The reason was to uplift the people, the spirit, but also to pay homage to the community that raised me as my family and my community. And a gesture of even bringing about 100 of these beer pots for each homestead as a gift, as a way of planting a seed of restoration, was also very important, because that's how it started with me, where I brought a gift to my father. And that's where they started saying, your purpose is to restore. And to go as far as taking one of the pieces and place it into the old ruins where my ancestors' burial ground is, on the other side of the village, which was a way of paying homage to the traumas and to what they've gone through, but also to appease their spirit and their ancestral spirit, that there is within this generation, there's some of us who are willing and open to continue where they left off. And that was very important, a gesture for us as a community, as a family. It's not only for my family, but it's for all those all over the world who have been displaced, who feel the need to appease so they can move forward. But for all those who they feel like they are the people that displaced or created the displacement, that they carried that guilt, to alleviate that. They said, this is not you, it was those who came before you. Get rid of that, but let's move forward and forge a much better future by understanding each other, by appreciating who we are and what we do and why we do what we do.
So this, you were mentioning that you took the piece to the your ancestral ground and where the ruins are. I think that's the here we are.
That is, yes, that is yes.
And then what happened there is that is it a ceremony of gratitude? Is it a ceremony of coming together?
So yes, there's ceremony of gratitude, definitely, but there's a ceremony. The core part of the ceremony was to appease the ancestral spirit, but also was to really bring peace within ourselves, those who carrying the guilt and the trauma, that, because what we believe is that as we were born by the people that came before us, we carry their traumas. We find that if you go to psychologies and all that kind of stuff, they will tell you that you're dealing with all of what your parents and your forebears have carried. So the way to in our practice is to create such rituals and call on their names and announce and sing and dance and try to relinquish all of that trauma. So that practice and that ceremony and that gesture of living the one stool there as a way of remembering and restoring and also just appeasing the ancestral spirit is a gesture of saying, now that we have done this gesture, can you take a seat and help us and continue to guide us and whisper all these messages as to what direction should we be taking now that we have accepted that we can continue where you left off. Yes.
I mean, it's a very powerful message, and if it sounds a little heavy, I think it's in fact very joyful and very hopeful. It's a very positive outlook on the future. And there was a question before we go to more questions. Can you remind us, the drawings behind you, are those drawings of the totems? Is that what you were referring to?
Yes. So some of, I mean, they're not as literal as the back right now. So when I'm working in the studio, as you would see, for instance, now there's some of the stools that yet to join the lot to go to the exhibition in New York. So as I'm working, so I'm also moving with the brush and the scrolls. So there's drawings and pencils and things all over the place in the studio. Sorry, just one moment. 10 minutes.
So I know you have
bugging us because of, you know. So what I want to mention is that, so the scrolls that you see in there, it's basically part of the process. So when I'm working, I kind of like creating like a cocoon around me, because everything that I'm doing has to do with the movement, the drawing, the painting, and the brushmanship. So some of the symbol you're seeing there will be reflected on the work that you'll be seeing in New York or in the Tonga as well itself.
Right. I'd love, ladies, it's your opportunity to ask your questions, because I know that Andile and Zizipho have a little bit of a time crunch there. So unmute yourself and ask your questions. It's just a few of us. Sally Ann, I can see you.
Yes, Andile, I'm interested. How
Yes.
many of these sort of symbols, signs are traditional, or have you evolved them?
So the answer to that is, I'm not gonna say they're traditional, because how they came about, they came through the visions as how all of my pieces would. So like a very vivid vision come true, and I will like very immediately start sketching that vision if I'm not in the studio. To give you context is that, so if I am dreaming of a piece, so it's the collection itself is called Itongo. Itongo is an ancestral dreamscape. The role of Itongo is the ancestors' dream spirit. They communicate through us, the living, and a way of reminding us, guiding us, perhaps warning us of certain things that may happen or may not happen if you adhere to the message. So what then happens is that, in my case, I guess as someone who have accepted the fact that I will channel through clay and through the way that I do these kind of messages. So they kept on coming literally as visual, specifically as I was practicing my brushmanship. So what happens is that a vision of a group of people performing a certain kind of movement or dance or a sort of gathering in a dream while I'm walking or talking, right? Or while I'm listening to a sound, then that will be associated with the gesture of a brush that, and then from there, the next thing will be to interrogate and go to an elder and say, I had this kind of a dream, because the important is that when you have such a dream, the tongue, you need to share that. When you share that, that means that you can be clear, and then you ask that it can be made clear, be given the next puzzle of the dream, because sometimes they're not clear. So in my case, they associate with the vision and the gesture of a brush, and that's how the symbol came about. Some will be literal. If I speak of the crawl or the vegetation or the roots, I will have dreamed of a certain kind of a root, which turns out to be a medical root or a cleansing root. So in that sense, I would associate it with certain kind of a gesture of a brush, and that's how the symbol came about. When I started coming through, because now I was present and ready to receive them, I started jotting them down on pieces of paper and all over the place, as you would see. And so there's about over 200 that just keep coming based on conversation that I'm having with people, certain kind of gestures, or based on certain dreams. But it's a mere vision that I would have of that gesture and of a brush, but also the visual that come with that and paired with the gesture of a brush. Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Marianne, unmute yourself, please.
That's nice. I usually have it unmuted. Sorry. Zizi, I have a question for you with regard to the combination of the two materials that you use in these beautiful ceremonial figures with the horns. Number one, obviously the size of them, are those coil pieces originally? Okay, so this is your brother working away in coil, which I know is very difficult. And then the actual antlers themselves, I thought I heard that they were cast bronze, or are they? They are. How, it's a technical question. How do you put metal and clay together like that?
Yes. Well, I had no idea when I had the vision, when I had the idea. Firstly, the reason why the bronze idea came was because if it wasn't clay, it was going to be extremely fragile. And
right, of course.
Transporting that. So then I had to think of what other medium or material can I use? And then definitely bronze came through. And fortunately, there's a bronze foundry studio that's quite close, not far from us. And they've been around for years. They masters in what they're doing. So what we did was they had to come through and we had to figure out how to join.
Connection, that's what I wondered.
Yes, that's a very technical part. And they had to, what we did was we just opened the holes and we didn't measure them. So it was a challenge because ideally, if we had planned it and knew exactly how to work it out, we would have it would have taken us less time, but it took us quite a long time because when we did the holes, they were not in a mold, so they were not
not perfect.
Like they were, we couldn't. I don't know how.
And it shrinks too, right? When you put it in the kiln,
so we had to drill
after the firing.
So after the firing, we had to do something that we've never done before, to drill on the highly fired clay. Yes. And so they came up with, there is a technical way of joining the two, but it's two, what do you call it?
Two rods.
Two rods.
Metal rods attached
two metal rods. So actually the horns can come off. So because of the weight of the bronze, so they're able to sit.
If I wasn't alone in the gallery, I'd give you a demonstration of how they sit on. If I had another couple of hands.
They're so robust, and I have in my own work tried to use two elements to go with clay, and the shrinking factor alone, when it comes out, when you fixed it, right? So whatever you put in the first place, you're never sure if it's going to be the right size when it comes out. And when you have something as heavy as that, I just couldn't imagine, but it certainly gives you must give you confidence to ship this now.
Yes, we had the challenge with the shrinkage. So when we opened those holes after the bisque firing, when we fired now the second firing, they were much smaller. So hence we were forced now to drill
again.
And it's a, great discovery, because now we know we can drill and we can work with other materials. I'd love to work with glass as well and see how to combine that as well.
Well, you would have enjoyed the previous conversation, because the couple that we looked at from London, she is a ceramist and he's a glass blower.
Amazing.
That's so you might take a look at that. Isabel can tell you the name of the group, but it was fascinating. You would really like it, because the mixture of the two materials is really a challenge. Well, I think your work is just stunning. I mean, it's so symbolistic and it's so raw and beautiful. It's so just gorgeous. So gorgeous.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Are you completely blown away?
Yeah.
Well, I really would like to thank you, Andile and Zizipho and Jacob. Of course, it's been quite an adventure and quite a moment for all of us. I think that we are obviously all ready to come and visit you in Cape Town.
Absolutely.
Come through.
And maybe when you have your next exhibit, we'll do a second visit. Who knows? Jacob, maybe you can put us on your mailing list, and we'll know what's happening. Thank you all, ladies and gents who have joined us. It's been an absolute pleasure again to see you today.